Anthony Richardson does it again as the Indianapolis Colts QB1 leads a game-winning drive over the New England Patriots to send Indy into the bye week with a victory. So what did Sunday show from Richardson? And is there cause for concern again for the Colts defense? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here as always by my co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally, in his new home. By the way, Drake moved over the weekend, so no, nothing in the background quite yet. But we all know Drake is going to have jerseys back there. He's going to have all the Colts swag in the background. But Drake, what a fantastic final drive, I should say, by Anthony Richardson. Honestly, Drake, the game was much closer than either of us thought it was going to be. And when you factor in how poorly the defense of the Indianapolis Colts played on Sunday, I mean, it wasn't looking good. But for the second time in 3 weeks, Anthony Richardson puts the team on his back late in the fourth quarter and brings the Colts to victory. It was a hell of a game for number 5.
Yeah, this background might be bleak, a little bit, vanilla, kind of boring, but you know what isn't? Anthony Richardson's fourth quarter heroics. That I'm telling you right now, it was the stat line yet again, okay, is not going to tell the full story. 109 passing yards. We'll go into all of it. There's something with this guy. There's something in this guy. The it factor is there. It's just a matter of honing in all of that, just kind of getting maybe a little bit more help from his teammates. We kind of keep talking about that week in, week out. It seems like there's just multiple miscues where his completion percentage, not saying it would have been astronomically better, but probably could have helped him out and helped the team out way more. But yeah, man, Anthony Richardson did what he was supposed to do. Shane Steichen gave him the keys to go take over the game. And he did it. He did it wonderfully. He finished it off with a touchdown and finished it off with a 2-point conversion instead of tying the game. So
yeah, exactly. And I mean, it wasn't a pretty win by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly not an impressive win going up against a New England team that is arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst team in the NFL, them and the Giants right now. But honestly, you're not going to apologize for a win. It doesn't affect the win column, whether it's a decisive victory or a win by one. And you go into the bye week having confidence in your quarterback that he is continuing to make a step in the right direction. So, guys, we're going to talk about everything on this Victory Monday. We're going to talk about Anthony Richardson and his performance. The Colts actually got Jonathan Taylor going a little bit yesterday, so we'll talk about that. Josh Downs was obviously missed, and then the defense, Drake. Man, we have a lot to talk about with this defense because it looked like the early season defense for the Indianapolis Colts, and that's not a good thing. Truitt is getting us started off with the super sticker as always. Truitt, thank you so much for all of your support. And he says double shot Dew Victory Monday. So hey, double shot of Mountain Dew. If Truitt, you're not a drinker, but Drake definitely is. Drake's going to take that sip. Thank you so much for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it. We've got Lindsay from across the pond. LFG, never in doubt. Love to see it from Lindsay Mack. Thank you so much for your support as well. The third host of the show, Stats Matt. What's up? Not a pretty one, but still an effective win. I know Stats Matt has plenty of stats tonight, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they're not good ones. So we'll dive into that as always. Sean Contright is here. Good to see you. Love the profile picture, by the way, with the Santa hat on. Love it. Steve is here. Hey, guys, Richardson played a lot better, and the line looked pretty darn good. Now, if we could get the rest of the team to play football. Yeah, absolutely. So we got AR5 in the chat with a lot of receivers down. Where's Anthony Gould? Anthony Gould was up yesterday, just didn't play much. He was more of a special teams guy, kind of taking over Ashton Doolin's role. So that's where they were at. So and then NFL nerd AR has that clutch gene. Definitely does. So we're going to talk about everything tonight. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials. Before we do that, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI on X, and make sure you're subscribed right here to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. make sure you hit that bell. You got to have the notifications on so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or like this week. Since it's the bye week, Drake and I are taking a little bit of a bye as well. No episode on Thursday night. Enjoy Thursday night football. Enjoy time with your families, guys. No Thursday episode this week from us here at the Horseshoe Huddle. We'll take a mini bye ourselves. But if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe. Give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So, Drake, let's dive right into it here on this Victory Monday. Anthony Richardson willed the Colts over the Patriots 25-24. The Colts took the field with 5:34 remaining in the fourth quarter, and Anthony Richardson, the last play that he was on the field was an interception. Threw an interception, an ugly interception to Christian Gonzalez, and the ball was behind Alec Pierce. Pierce had to slow down for it, and Gonzalez jumped right in front of it and picked it off. Defense actually got a stop on that next possession, and then Anthony Richardson comes out the field and delivers a 19-play drive to take the Colts all the way down the field for the touchdown. Now, Drake, I'm going to read you the stats for Anthony Richardson, and of course, it doesn't do it justice. I feel like that's just going to be the theme we're going to consistently talk about on the show. If you're a scoreboard or a box score watcher for Anthony Richardson, I mean, you're not going to have much to say because you obviously aren't going to get the full picture. 12 of 24 for 109 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air with those 2 interceptions. He also had 9 carries for 48 yards and the rushing touchdown plus the 2-point conversion he got on the ground as well. But Drake, I want to talk about that game-winning drive first of all. First question to you here is, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind when the Colts stepped out on the field with 5:34 to go? And then what did you see from Anthony Richardson that really stood out to you on that final drive where he led the Indy down the field to get that touchdown and ultimately the 2-point conversion to win the game?
Really, the first thing that really stood out is, you have to find a way to not let New England get the ball back. Okay, like you need to use all of this 5 minutes. That's the first thing. I mean, it was an 80-play drive, of course. But like I was thinking to myself, can he not necessarily – it's not like you don't want him to make an explosive play, but like can he manage that well enough as a guy who has very limited experience where he's going to be able to manage that clock yet also use as much of it as possible while hurrying at the same time. That was an interesting position for any QB to be in. But I saw plays made when they needed to be. I saw just a propensity to find he just finds the right yardage. He finds the right receiver. You don't have Josh Downs out there, who is arguably his best, quickest target to get to. And he's been the best receiver by all regards. I know Pittman's the guy, but he was able to make plays like that touchdown, closing it all off with Alec Pierce. Everything just leading up to that 19 plays, that was composure. I saw composure while also, you saw him emotional at times in that game, frustrated with some of these drops. But I saw a guy that was able to turn a performance around. I mean, he threw a couple bad picks and he still goes out there and wins the game. So none of that mattered. I saw a guy that has serious focus. He can put those blinders on, kind of like Andrew Luck. An interception almost never meant a damn thing to Andrew Luck. He would go right back out there, look no further than the playoff game against the Chiefs. So I think that's the kind of mentality that Anthony Richardson has, is all that matters is we get the win. The stats don't matter. I need to play better. He knows he can't throw picks. But I just saw composure, I saw focus, and I saw an ability to bounce back from starting off rough.
Yeah, that poise was what really stood out to me throughout the entire drive.
Yes,
yes, you could tell in some of his reactions how much it meant to Anthony Richardson. Obviously the drop that AD Mitchell had, the drop that Kylan Granson had. And our good friend Noah Compton also posted this clip on X, that if you look at the all-22 film, when the Colts are getting to the football, they're inside, I think they're inside the 10 or inside the 20 at this point, and the Colts are coming up to the line of scrimmage, Anthony Richardson wasn't happy with the sense of urgency or the quickness at which the Colts were getting up to the football, and he's screaming at that offense to get set and get on the line. That's what you want to see from your starting quarterback, from your franchise quarterback. He's really, over these past couple of weeks since he's been back, he's really taken ownership of this offense, taken ownership of that leadership role too. And I think that's been outside of his comfort zone because Anthony Richardson is more of a quiet guy. He's a guy that isn't necessarily a rah-rah leader. He's more of a guy that likes to lead by example. But you've seen since he's come back, that voice has come out, and he's barking at guys when he needs to. He's being more vocal with his leadership, and I think that's something that Shane Steichen has challenged him to do, and he's certainly answering the call. But getting back to that final drive, Drake, I mean, there was just multiple times where Anthony Richardson could have very easily folded. I mean, I think he faced 3 fourth downs on that final drive. Obviously converted every single one of those. That final one was 4th and goal. Had to have that touchdown. He stands in the pocket. He stays calm in the pocket. And that's one of the biggest things too that I have seen since the benching is just how much, like how calm he is in the pocket. You're not seeing him rush the throws. There's something that you saw him do before the benching, where he's trying to get the ball out too quickly. He's too excited with it. He's not aligning his lower body with his upper body, causing the throws to either sail or go wide. He's much more calm back there, and I think that's because he's preparing. He has a different but he has a different attitude in a different way that he is preparing, a different mindset about him while he's out there. I think he trusts his receivers, especially Michael Pittman, Alec Pearson, Josh Downs. He really puts trust in those guys. I think you can throw Mo Alley-Cox into that category as well. And he's seeing the field. The game is slowing down for him. Something that we talked about over and over and over again over the season. Once the game starts to slow down for him, you're going to see him make these plays. And he wasn't perfect yesterday. I mean, as StatsMat says right here, he was charting Anthony Richardson's completions. 3 were inaccurate throws, 4 were PBUs, 3 drops, 2 interceptions. So again, not perfect on the day by any stretch of the imagination, but for the most part, he looks calm in the pocket. The mechanics look much better. He's finding the open receivers. He's trusting his reads, being more decisive with the football. That's what you want to see, and it's leading to better games. For all the people that just look at the box score and say that he had a bad game, well, you don't know football at all. That's why you shouldn't just look at the box score. I mean, hell, Drake, if A.D. Mitchell catches that dime that was dropped in the bucket, if Kylan Granson catches that dime that was dropped in the bucket, right there, his completion percentage goes up to 59%. 2 more completions here or there, you're looking at a 67% game per completion percentage game for Anthony Richardson. So it's not like he was, 25 of 50 out there and had 25 incompletions. Colts hardly had the ball. So but I'm getting off track here as always, but when you look at that final drive, Drake, I just think it just shows the tremendous growth that Anthony Richardson has had over these last 3 weeks. And not only that, but the belief that Shane Steichen and this entire team has in Anthony Richardson, that when push comes to shove and they need someone to step up and they need someone to go out there and win the game, they're going to put the ball in Five's hands. They've done it twice now in 3 weeks, and they've got 2 wins to show for it.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned the 4th down conversions, because one play that really stuck out to me wasn't even necessarily the touchdown. I mean, of course, that's like the whole game's on the line, obviously, right. But each one of those 4th downs, the game was also on the line. And it was the one where he rolls right, and you're thinking, okay, as soon as he starts rolling right, I'm like, he's going to go he's going to go try to run over somebody for these yards, and they're going to be ready for him. There's no way New England's not looking for this quarterback run. And of course, there's the defensive back ready to jump on Anthony Richardson. What does he do? Instead of trusting his power, trusting his running ability, trusting the fact that I trucked a defensive back, almost pulverized a guy from the Jets not long ago. Instead of doing that, he stops, sees Mo Alley-Cox, and just a nice, simple throw. It converted everything. Not saying he couldn't have got the first down, but it's a lot easier. And you have to make that throw. There's just so many must-have moments in that fourth quarter. If you can, I'm telling you, if those underneath throws and those intermediate throws, once those start to become slow motion for him, like those fourth down plays, oh man, I mean, we're not trying to hype him up because this is a Colts channel. We as analysts are saying that what we've seen, along with the things that he's working out, and if his playmakers make plays, by the way, A.D. Mitchell and Kylan Granson pull those in, you're looking at probably another 60 yards. Mm-hmm. Okay, like it probably good 30 yards each on those things. So if all that stuff can start to line up, man, I think you're going to have a weapon. I think you're going to have a weapon at quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you talk about the decision to go for two, on top of that, Drake, first I want to do the stat of the day by Stats Matt, presented by Busch Light. As always, the decision to go for two was supported by an increase of 5.5% win probability by going for it instead of playing for overtime. So great call by Shane Steichen, by the way. I think it was multifaceted, honestly, Drake. And we talked about this on Bleacher Report yesterday. I think number one, he saw that his quarterback was rolling. He saw that they really didn't have an answer for Anthony Richardson on the ground. And that comes to our second stat of the day. Anthony Richardson ran for 48 yards and a touchdown, and not 6 of 9 runs were designed and resulted in 29 of the 48 and the touchdown. Plus, and then with a 2-point conversion was actually a zone read, but you can tell that Steichen wanted to put the ball in Anthony Richardson's hands to go out there and win the game. And second of all, I don't think he really trusted that the defense could stop the Patriots at that point because they hadn't all day. We'll talk about the defense later, but when the defense was struggling, he figured, this offense is rolling right now. Anthony Richardson's in a groove. Let's go out there and let's be aggressive and let's try to win the game. And that's exactly what he did, because here's Steichen's quote after the game when he was asked about the call to go for two and why he did it. And Steichen said, put it in Five's hands to go get it. Now, it was a zone read, too, where it might have went to JT around the edge, but he was reading the guy, and boom, he kept it up in the middle. Had Quentin pulling around there for him, so it was good. Obviously, it was like pick your poison. If the end was going to crash on Jonathan Taylor, you're going to have Anthony keeping it. And not only is Anthony keeping it, for insurance, you're going to have Quentin Nelson pulling around, which Quentin Nelson, shout out to Quentin. Big Q had a hell of a game yesterday, much better game and a bounce back game than he did against the Lions. Have to shout out Big Q for that. But it was extra insurance. It was a fantastic play call and honestly a fantastic decision by Shane Steichen, showing like I've got confidence in my quarterback to go out there and win the game. That's exactly what he did yesterday, Drake.
Yeah, and you love that. Like you love when the coach can just put it in the quarterback's hands. That's what a franchise quarterback can do. The coach can say, "Hey, guess what? Go do your thing, man. Go do your thing." I mean, like the more that Steichen can trust Anthony Richardson, and the more that Anthony Richardson can continue to trust himself, and hopefully his weapons can help build trust between the two of them as well. I think that you're going to get more stable performances. I think you'll see less and less of these like 11 for 24, 13 for 27 performances where it's like at 50% or sub. But yeah, there's a lot of factors to that completion percentage. But at the end of the day, he was the catalyst to that drive. He was the catalyst to the fourth down conversions. He scored the touchdown. He scored the 2-point conversion. Anthony Richardson was the offense on that 19-play drive. So
yeah, and you don't want to get ahead of yourself, obviously, and there's a long way to go before we crown the Anthony Richardson the guy.
He's showing it, though.
He's showing why he was so enticing, why the Colts picked him at number 4 overall, and that's why these reps are so valuable. The more he is out there, you can see the progress. And again, quarterback growth is not linear. Okay, it's not like he's going to it's just going to keep climbing and getting better. He's going to have a dud here and there. That's to be expected. But these last 3 games, Drake, and I think Pro Football Focus has also noticed this too. These last 3 games for Anthony Richardson have been the best 3 games of his career. according, or at least of this season, according to Pro Football Focus. So you're seeing that. You're seeing, I think it's just going to get better. You're going to see him continue to get more comfortable, and then in the offseason, you're going to see him work on his mechanics. But it's hard for him to do that mid-season unless you get like a benching. But we saw with the benching, he really put a focus on marrying his lower body with his upper body, and it's helped with accuracy. I obviously can't. He can't throw and catch the football unless you're Josh Allen, apparently, which, by the way, fantastic play. Josh Allen's the MVP this year. But, who's the guy that Anthony Richardson is compared most to? Josh Allen. Not saying he's going to be Josh Allen. He's got a long way to go for that. But the flashes are there, Drake. And like you mentioned to kick off the show, with Anthony Richardson, and the Colts haven't had this since Andrew Luck. But with Anthony Richardson, you always feel like you're in a game. You always feel like you have a chance. And if that's how you're feeling already, when the kid still hasn't had a full season worth of starts in the NFL, I think that's really, really good news. And I think you can be encouraged by where this young kid is headed, especially with how the last 3 weeks have gone. But, Drake, the offense isn't just Anthony Richardson. I know we could probably talk for the entire episode about Richardson's performance yesterday, but some other players had some really good performance. Jonathan Taylor got back on track, and that's what the Colts needed desperately. They desperately needed for Jonathan Taylor to get rolling again. JT in the running game, 25 carries. They really leaned heavily on Jonathan Taylor for 96 yards. JT also had a catch for a touchdown for 7 yards. So Jonathan Taylor was heavily involved in this game plan. Only had 3.8 yards per carry, but at the same time, it wasn't like he was completely stuffed on every down. And you got to credit Jonathan Taylor, but you also have to credit this offensive line. Hell of a response by this offensive line yesterday, considering how poorly they played against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, 25 carries. I mean, my God, did they want to basically run the offense around Jonathan Taylor. 96 yards, had a very rare reception. Not only that, it scored on probably one of the most heads-up plays I've ever seen, where he catches it, turns around, realizes, crap, I have 2 yards, somehow switches hands, still gets that ball in the end zone. This offensive line, though, Andrew, I'm glad you mentioned that. You had Ryman back. Okay, you had Nelson. Fantastic. Great. You have Danny Pinter at center. Okay, you have Matt Gonsalves, okay, and at right tackle. And then you have Mark Glowinski. Is it 2021? Where did 64 come from? They have the same profile picture on the site, on the Colts site, as they did back then. So, you're looking at from the center on the rest of the right side of that line, and you were thinking this could be a game where it might be disastrous. They were secure. They kept Richardson alive. They got the ground game going. I mean, they were much better, although it doesn't take much to build from that really bad performance. You got to give a shout out to Tony Sperano Jr. Having those guys ready. All of a sudden, you're shuffling everything, and you're moving Matt Gonsalves over to an entirely other side of the line, which, while it's still tackle, you're talking about pass blocking as opposed to a whole lot of run blocking and power moves. So it's like there's differences there. I'm really impressed, especially with Danny Pinter, Mark Lewinsky, and Matt Gonsalves, just because they were in, hey, go start, and another guy played a brand new position, and they held it up, man.
3 of the top 5 grades for the Colts from Pro Football Focus this week were the offensive line. It was Danny Pinter, Bernard Ryman, and Quentin Nelson were all in the top 5 of grades. And Drake, yes, Bernard Ryman certainly helped. Coming back over on that left side, Bernard Ryman, he's going to be solid. Quentin had a bounce-back game. You expected Quentin Nelson and his all-pro, future Hall of Fame talent self to have a bounce-back game. Danny Pinter, I had a sneaky confidence in, Drake, because we've seen in the past Danny Pinter has been a really good center. But when he's pushed over to guards are usually bigger. They have to be stronger because they're taking on more of those defensive tackles straight up. Danny Pinter didn't have to do that. So at center, I had a sneaky confidence that he would be serviceable, and he proved to be more than serviceable yesterday. Shout out to Mark Glowinski, though. coming off the street. Mark Lewinsky hasn't even been on a team, Drake, since March. So it's not like he was with the team all season or on a practice squad all season and he was in shape. No, this guy stayed in shape all year, stayed ready to play. He's been with the Colts for 2 weeks. And this isn't like it's Frank Reich's offense where he knows the offense or knows the terminology. He's been with this team for 2 weeks on the practice squad. Immediately gets thrown into the starting lineup for Dalton Tucker and didn't miss a beat. You saw the broadcast, but I mean, Spiro Dedes and Adam Archuleta are terrible broadcasters. Let's put that out there right now. But even they highlighted some areas where Mark Lewinsky was able to work on some combo blocks or get to the next level and really do a fantastic job. And Matt Gonsalves, can't say enough about that kid. He continues to impress. I said this on the show. I think I said this on Bleacher Report yesterday as well. But if you don't know offensive line play, I don't think you truly know how difficult it is to make the switch from left tackle to right tackle or vice versa. They're two completely different positions, two completely different techniques. It's like going from writing with your left hand to writing with your right hand. Most people can't do it interchangeably. Matt Gonsalves went over there on that right side and really, really held up well. And I think it gives you hope that Gonsalves could potentially be even your right. We talked about him being the right guard of the future. He might be your right tackle of the future. Drake, he played that well and has played tackle incredibly well, no matter right or left, all season long. Tony Sperano and his guys met the bell this week. They really did. They were embarrassed last week. They have been embarrassed for weeks, not being able to get the running game going. And I'm sure Shane Steichen and Tony Sperano were on those guys this week, and they took it personal. They stepped up in a big way. Again, 0 sacks by Anthony Richardson. Now that's an Anthony Richardson stat as well, because he's able to evade a lot of sacks. But it didn't seem like the Patriots were getting a lot of pressure yesterday. I don't have the raw numbers in front of me. Stats, Matt, maybe you can help me out there, but you got to credit this offensive line. They were much better this week, and it certainly looked like the group that we have seen in previous weeks, even without Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, and Will Friesen there.
Yeah, and it's really encouraging to see this bounce back performance, not just because of how bad it was against the Lions, but the fact that you did have to put Pinter at center, the fact that you did just have to elevate Lewinsky from no team to practice squad to active roster, and now he's got to go out there and start and does just fine. And I'm right there with you. I'll take a second to praise Matt Gonsalves. The Colts traded up to get this guy. I know how much you loved that pick, Andrew. When it happened, I know you were all about that pick, and it's paying off. He's already played multiple positions on the offensive line, and he's a rookie. Okay, that just shows the intelligence. And like you said, yes, it is so much different when you're playing on the left side as opposed to the right side because of what you have to specialize in more often than not. And also, like you said, the reads, the techniques, it's all just completely different. It's flip-flopped. So it's like the fact that he was able to do all that, massive shout out to the rookie. I think that Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves, it's safe to say those have been some pretty damn good picks for the Colts.
And we won't dive into it too much today, but Wyatt Law makes an interesting point. Our young O-linemen could make Kelly and Smith cap casualties this offseason. Father Time is undefeated now.
Tough conversation.
Now, Kelly will be a free agent, and at this point, I'm starting to lean towards that Ryan Kelly won't be back. Braden Smith has one more year left on his deal. I think when Braden Smith is healthy, he's still a very, very fine right tackle. So I don't know if the Colts would give up on him and just cut him just yet, but Gonsalves is nipping at the bud there, Drake, and it'll be interesting to see, how the makeup of this offensive line changes this offseason, whether they do roll with Bortolini and end up cutting ties with Kelly, or if they end up putting Matt Gonsalves at right guard, or continue to have him be that swing tackle until Braden Smith's contract is up. It's going to be interesting to see what type of what that looks like on the offensive line here over the next couple of off seasons. And then, Drake, to kind of finish off our talk on the offense, the Colts desperately missed Josh Downs yesterday. Josh Downs, obviously, he was out with the shoulder injury. Shane Steichen did say that there's a potential for him to be back against the Denver Broncos, but he wasn't going to, commit to that. It just kind of depends how these next couple of weeks goes. But the offense really struggled to get into a rhythm, especially in the short to intermediate game. The Patriots defense did a really good job focusing in on Michael Pittman Jr. Pittman did lead the team, 5 catches, 42 yards yesterday. But I mean, the Anthony Richardson was trying to get it to Pittman, and a lot of times Pittman was being double covered yesterday when you turn on the film. And because Josh Downs wasn't out there, the Colts were able to do that. And obviously the Colts didn't throw the ball very much yesterday. And I think that was as a result of Josh Downs not being out there as well. But thankfully, Pittman and Pierce stepped up at the end. Mo Cox had some really big catches. Will Mallory made a really nice catch. But Drake, I think it's obvious at this point how big of an impact Josh Downs has on this offense, not only from a standpoint of Anthony Richardson, but in a play calling standpoint as well. Shane Steichen leaned heavily into the run because Josh Downs wasn't out there to pick up those easy yardage that he has been accustomed to doing this year.
Yeah, and you don't realize just how much Josh Downs means to the Colts until you saw this game yesterday. Pittman is an all-around receiver, right? He can get it done deep, he can get it done intermediate and short, but he's more of, I think, that intermediate guy, okay, than he is the short, quick win guy all the time. So then you got Pierce, who's strictly vertical. Okay. And then you got the tight ends. You would hope Kylan Granson could be that quick win guy, but he's just having absolutely a baffling year. And then Will Mallory has barely played. So they didn't really have that quick win receiver. They didn't really have that option yesterday. And the Patriots did a great job. I think they walked into that game with a crummy 4 interceptions. They lead with 6. They accomplished half of their season's turnovers as far as interceptions in that game. So they did a good job. But yeah, I think that the Colts offense is hitting a bye at the right time. I really think you need to get Josh Downs back. And maybe that's something else that you address in the offseason or in the draft is maybe another quick win receiver. Because I think A.D. Mitchell is that guy to an extent, but he's also more explosive than I think, he is a slot receiver. So.
Semper Colts fan, just stabbing me in the heart once again. Should have got Brock Bowers, but we missed that train. Listen, the train was humming. The train was getting closer and closer. And then, Mark Davis, Antonio Pierce said, no dice. That train isn't coming to Indianapolis. We're going to take him to the Raiders. And now the fantastic talent that is Brock Bowers. And you guys are all seeing it firsthand, how he's literally breaking records out there in Las Vegas.
That's why Andrew wanted him.
And how it's being wasted out there in that a cesspool of a franchise there at the Las Vegas Raiders. But speaking of cesspool, Drake, Colts defense, awful yesterday. Putrid effort by the Colts defense. I've got the raw numbers here. I know Stats Matt is going to be throwing plenty of stats about the defense in here. So I'm excited to see those. But Drake, 422 total yards given up to the New England Patriots yesterday, 200 of those on the ground. I think, honestly, that is you think of the Houston game, you think of the Green Bay Packers game and how those teams just ran all over the Colts. They didn't have as many rushing yards as the Patriots did yesterday, 200 rushing yards for this New England offense. The New England offense, we talked about it on Thursday, came into the game as the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL. And they put up their most yardage all season against the Indianapolis Colts defense. It was just almost inexcusable. So Drake, we got this first stat on the defense from Stats Matt, presented by Busch Light. New England only punted once and reached the red zone in every possession but 2. And 1 was the final possession, where they were just trying to get as many yards as possible to try to kick a field goal. Another stat by Stats Matt. The Colts allowed the Patriots to have their first 200-plus yard rushing game this season, while also giving the Patriots their 3rd best passing game, totaling in the Patriots' first 400-yard game of the season. That's awful. It's inexcusable, Drake, by this Colts defense. And then for the fourth one, the Patriots had one other game over 328 yards, continued from the first stat, or from the fourth stat above. Drake, I'm going to ask you a simple question, because we've had time to have this game digest. What went wrong? where did you see the big breakdowns on this Colts defense yesterday, and where do you think the biggest problem was for Gus Bradley's unit yesterday?
Man, I hate to say this, when it comes to the ground attack, right? I think that you have to look at the linebackers this time. I do think you have to look at the linebackers. I know that Zaire Franklin had himself a day. Again, go back to box score watching. Missed tackles is another thing. You had 8 on the day, 2 from DeForest Buckner, 2 from Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones at one point, ladies and gentlemen, did what I like to call a junior high tackle, which is where you don't use your hands. Okay. You just run as fast as you can and you launch yourself like this. And all he did against Ramondre Stevenson was this. Bounced off of him like it was an absolute joke, like a piece of hail off your windshield. That is not going to work against the Denver Broncos. That's not going to work. Every team pretty much is better than the offense you just faced. And you let them run the hell all over you. So I think with the defensive backs, Sam Womack didn't have the best game. Jalen Jones didn't have the best game. Like you mentioned in our Bleacher Report episode, they avoided Demario Douglas for the most part. Why? Because Kenny Moore was covering him so much because he's a slot receiver. So their number one wide receiver wasn't really there. Looking back at the linebackers, the tight ends kicked the crap out of them in this game. So it's really about, I think, the linebackers. I do think you need to have more from Grover and DeForest Buckner when they're in the game like that. But New England did a good job blocking them. At that point, it's on the linebackers to provide support. I just got to see more out of EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin than just tackle numbers.
All very valid points. We have another super chat from our good friend, Paul Wilson. Paul, thank you so much, brother, for all of your support. As always, we really, really do appreciate it. And Paul says, just look at where this defense ranks in the past 3 years. The defense has been horrible, almost unforgivable for 3 freaking years. We can't tackle. Paul's fed up. Paul's fed up, Drake, and you can tell by there. And Paul, you're not alone. A lot of Colts fans are fed up with this defense and even covering this team. It's kind of infuriating to see the same things happen over and over again, and have been happening for years now. But Paul, thank you so much for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it. Paul, just like you, Drake, he makes some really valid points. I'm going to go talk about the run game here first, too, because obviously that's where 200 yards rushing is inexcusable, especially against the New England Patriots, who it's not like they're a dominant team on the ground. They were middle of the pack on the ground. You see this team and the Patriots interior of the offensive line. We talked about this on Thursday. We talked about how DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart should eat those guys alive. They did a really good job, and Buckner couldn't get off blocks. He did get off blocks a few times. Not gonna say every time, but in the run game specifically, they really pushed Buckner out of the way at times. Grover Stewart didn't have his type of game, but the linebacker play, Drake, I think you nailed it there. You saw Zaire Franklin. Zaire Franklin, he had 12 tackles for and a sack and a half. A tackle for a loss. So when you look at that, and then he popped the interception up in the air for Julian Blackman. EJ Speed with 9 tackles. So again, when you look at the box score, it does look a little bit different than what it actually was. I will say Zaire Franklin had an okay game. He definitely played a role in the defense's high moments yesterday. 1.5 sacks from your middle linebacker. That definitely has to be said. Now, one of them, Drake May, ran out of bounds, and the other one, Drake May, kind of fell down. But at the same time, it was pressure by Zaire Franklin that forced that. But again, when you look at the linebackers, they got to play better. I mean, too many times Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed were pushed out of the play over, and that's what the biggest problem was early in the season too, when the Colts were giving up huge games against the Texans and the Packers. They're trying to attack, and I think that's something that is being taught by Richard Smith, by the linebackers coach, by Cato June. They're being taught to attack, to get downhill as quick as possible. But when you do that, a lot of times they're overrunning the play. And I think offenses are seeing that, where they're getting the offensive line to go one way. You see the linebackers, EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, overrun the play. And then as soon as they get a body on him, the running back just cuts back upfield. And that's where you see a lot of the big plays happening. Way too many missed tackles. Again, Jalen Jones, not sure what the hell he's doing out there, but more often than not, he's not wrapping up. He's just kind of throwing a shoulder check in there. Jalen Jones, you're not a big dude. Shoulder check isn't going to do much when you're in the NFL. Get your arms out there and wrap them up. You got long arms, dude. Freaking use them. That needs to change. EJ Speed gets shot out of a rocket and looks good sometimes, but again, other times overruns the play, doesn't take a really good angle, and it ends up leading to a bunch of yards. Now, I will say this: we're going to get to the since we're talking about the linebackers. Another great stat by StatsMat. The Colts linebackers were credited with 9 receptions allowed on 12 targets for 86 yards and a touchdown. I will say the play that Drake May threw that touchdown to, I think it was Austin Hooper. Yes, it was Austin Hooper. Zaire Franklin was in pretty good coverage on that play. So I'm not going to give that to him, but Drake, there's no denying how many times Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper ate yesterday. Those were the leading receivers for the Patriots. Hunter Henry, 7 catches for 75 yards. Austin Hooper, 4 catches for 42 yards over the middle of the field. That was the big thing for this defense. We even talked about it, that the Patriots might try to attack over the middle of the field. Sure enough, they did. Another stat by StatsMat, the Colts cornerbacks were credited with 7 catches on 9 targets for 44 yards. So not a lot of yards given up by the cornerbacks. A lot of that can be contributed to Kenny Moore really locking down Demario Douglas yesterday, but at the same time, wasn't good enough by Jalen Jones or Sam Womack. And so when you have your back half of the defense not executing, your second and third levels not executing like they should, and you have your 2 best defensive linemen not really being able to put up much of a fight against the run, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. So while I do think that there are problems with this scheme, certainly with the way things are being taught. Obviously, if the linebackers are continually overrunning the play, that's something that has to be addressed. But at the same time, too, Drake, the Colts defenders aren't executing. They're not going out there and executing like they should. And that's leading to these big games. And when you're consistently missing tackles, you're consistently getting beat, the players have to take some responsibility for that too. And I believe me, I am not a Gus Bradley apologist or anything like that, but I think it's more nuanced of a conversation as to why this Colts defense is struggling so much than to just put all the blame on Gus Bradley. Hope you're on mute.
I did that on purpose to make sure you were paying attention. So we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew's, he's focused. I'm kidding. That was on me. So people, I understand Gus Bradley. Okay. Like at one point in the season, he wasn't adjusting. He just kept throwing the same thing out there. Another point in the season, he does adjust and starts to look better. And the Colts offense just can't help the defense win the game. In this game, I mean, it made me realize, like, look, Gus Bradley's scheme is his scheme. Okay. It is soft coverage to come up and make the tackle early so that you limit and mitigate. You're allowing those short completions and allowing a little bit of a running lane so that you can make the tackle in 1-2 yard gains. It's also a defense that's predicated on bend but don't break, trading field goals for hopefully touchdowns. Okay. They aren't tackling. Okay. That breaks the whole scheme. It ruins the whole scheme when you can't tackle and when you can't cover those tight ends. By the way, Hunter Henry, 7 catches, Austin Hooper, 4, and accounted for 11 of Drake May's 24 completions. Mm-hmm. Okay, so almost half of the freaking completions came from Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Okay, so my point is this. It's like Gus Bradley's defense, it can be, a problem at times, but honestly, the tackling's got to be better. It's a fundamental aspect. It's the easiest aspect to try to understand. And I remember there's been questioning, at times where Gus Bradley and the other coordinators do questions with the media. They do like video conferences. He said, we have a thing where if you make contact with the guy, you got to wrap him up. You got to get him on the ground. So Gus Bradley is going through this at practice. And it's just not translating to the game against arguably the worst offense. So thank God for that bye week, Andrew. Because I think the Colts, once they do return to practice and get back into the groove of things, I think they might be working on tackling.
And when you do look at how the Patriots attacked the Colts defense yesterday, it's something that other teams have done to this Colts defense throughout the year, especially in the passing game. Drake May was getting the ball out very, very quickly. I think it was around 2.5 seconds that he was getting the ball out. They made it a priority for the rookie to not hold the ball very long against this Colts pass rush. They wanted him to get the ball out quickly to his first or second read, and because the Colts were playing off coverage, and we've seen multiple teams do that. We've seen the Jacksonville Jaguars do that with Trevor Lawrence for years against this Colts team, where they do the quick game. We saw the Titans do it earlier this year. We've seen multiple teams do it against this Colts defense, where they hit the quick game heavy, so that way this pass rush can't get to him, can't affect the quarterback, and then because the Colts are playing soft coverage and playing off coverage, they're able to just drive right down the field, and that's what we saw. Now, granted, that doesn't work as well in the red zone because the Colts do tighten up in the red zone because the area of the field is so much shorter, and that's why you saw a lot of field goals yesterday by the Patriots, and why this bend but don't break can work at times. You're going to give up a lot of yardage, but still, Drake, that keeps the defense on the field, tires them out. And when you have an offense that was rolling yesterday early with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, those guys are just sitting on the sideline. You need to get off the field so you can have your offense that is rolling, try to stack some more points, and then that allows this pass rush to come alive, because you can't just quick game your way down the field and take all that time off the clock. You have to start looking for deeper shots. That's when you see Latu get home, Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Dayo Odeyingbo. That's when those guys are supposed to get home. And that's what something that I know Chris Ballard always talks about, the defense, like the defense of the 2000s, where it was like the Monty Kiffin style defense. That's why he goes from that tree and has gone from that tree with Eberflus, with Gus Bradley. Tony Dungy ran this basically the same system. But the thing is, the Colts got out to a lead. The Colts would always get out to a lead to allow their pass rushers of Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis to then pin their ears back and go get the quarterback, because the offense was forced to go throw it. But to do that, you also have to have good defense early for that to work. And so far, the Colts really haven't been able to do that. But when they did have an actually good pass rush, they got home. Granted, you kind of mentioned it here, Drake. May had 24 of 30 for 238 yards, had the touchdown to Hooper, and then the interception that was tipped up by Franklin and then intercepted by Julian Blackman. The Colts did have 4 sacks on the day, so they were able to get to Drake May a little bit. Zaire Franklin with a sack and a half. Buckner had a crucial sack on that first drive. Nick Cross was credited with a sack, and then Kwity Paye also had a half a sack yesterday. And here's another stat by StatsMat that just shows kind of the impact Kwity Paye had yesterday. Just didn't really have many opportunities to do it. Kwity Paye had 4 pressures and a half sack on only 25 pass rushing snaps yesterday. Buckner and Dayo Odeyingbo were the only other defensive linemen to have multiple pressures. Kwity Paye was eaten out there, Drake, but because May was getting rid of the football so quickly, Kwity Paye didn't really have a chance. And again, because the Patriots were running the football so well too, the Patriots had 24 had 31 carries yesterday to 31 pass attempts. Now, 4 sacks were included with that, but 31 carries, you're not going to have very many opportunities to get after the quarterback. Kwity Paye did, and he made the most of it. He was getting pressure on Drake May, but again, when you are allowing quarterbacks to get rid of the ball so quickly because you're playing soft coverage and you're trying to protect everything deep, you're not taking full advantage of this pass rush and of this defensive line that the Colts have invested so heavily into. They just simply don't have the time to get back there to the quarterback to really have an impact. So, it's you can see how that desperately hurts this defense, and why we're seeing all the yardage being placed up, and why teams are constantly going to that quick game when they face the Colts as well.
Yeah, and I also want to go back to the fact that, the Patriots had the ball for about 35 minutes of this game. The Colts only had it for about 25. Obviously, the Lions took over the time of possession, and then the Colts had that advantage against the Jets. But we've seen more often than not, I feel like the Colts just don't have the ball enough offensively. So, like, you're asking your defense to play soft coverage, in the latter quarters, they're probably a little bit gassed, right? And they're not tackling. Okay, so I think that there's a piece of the offense that could also help the defense a little bit more, but you're not lying, Andrew. I mean, when it gets to a certain point in the game, and Drake May, we were both high on Drake May, right? We both were. I think that he's got a very bright future. My goodness, some of those throws he made were very impressive for a rookie, especially with a bad offense. So I think he's got a bright future. But, man, a bend but don't break soft coverage defense that's allowing underneath throws, easy completions, and then you're missing those tackles and turning a 2-yard gain into like a 6-yard gain. It's just going to constantly put you in rough situations like 2nd and 8 or 7. Way better than 2nd and 4 or 2nd and 4 or 3. Like it's all about situational football. And I feel like the Colts put themselves in really awkward positions sometimes with this bend but don't break defense. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just Gus Bradley's scheme. I mean, it just is. I think if you're going to see anything, you might see some blitzes. I just can't see him telling the guys, hey, go press coverage. I can't see him doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Hustle Man Jones with a quick question here, Drake. At this point, would you guys pay Dayo Odeyingbo is in a contract year. Drake, I'm gonna let you go first. Would you pay Dayo Odeyingbo, and if so, what's that contract looking like?
Oh man, damn it, Hustle Man Jones. That's a really good question. I think that I think that he's shown enough that he is a valuable piece of this defense. I also feel like he's interchangeable on the interior and the outside. I think he can play both. I think that you give him something similar maybe to what Samson Ebukam had, maybe like a 3-year, $24 million, $27 million contract. I wouldn't go over double figures until he gives you a really good reason for it. But yeah, man, Dayo Odeyingbo, I feel like he's played consistently good enough to at least get that I hate to say this, a starter level type of contract.
Yeah, and that's you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say if it depends on the price, obviously, for every player. You're not just going to give Dayo Odeyingbo a blank check, especially for a guy that likely isn't going to be a full-time starter for you. He's going to be a spot starter for you because the Colts defense, the future defensive end for the Colts is Leatu Latu and Kwity Paye.
That's right.
So if Dayo Odeyingbo, if you're able to lock him up for a similar contract that you gave Samson Ebukam, then yeah, of course you do it. But if Dayo Odeyingbo's looking to make $13-14 million a year, I'm not going that high for Dayo Odeyingbo. You can draft and find other guys to fill that same role. But Drake, before we kind of wrap up our talk on this game. I see, obviously there's a lot of people out there that say, Gus Bradley needs to be fired. He needs to be fired this instant. Or saw a lot of people yesterday say Gus Bradley better be left in New England and not get on the flight home. The thing is, and I don't think that fixes anything, guys. And here's why. Yeah, even if the Colts do fire Gus Bradley at this point, like right now in the season, the scheme isn't changing. The players aren't going to all of a sudden start executing any better because here's the thing, guys. Gus Bradley, say he leaves. The interim is probably going to be Richard Smith or Ron Miles, guys that have been working with Gus Bradley for the last 10 years at least. So it's not like you have other guys on the defensive staff that are going to switch things up right this second, and not only that, you can't change defensive schemes at week 13 or 14 into the season. It's just not how it works. It's not like it's a Madden. You go into your playbooks in Madden and switch it up to a different playbook. Yeah, exactly. That's just not how it works. So the thing would be is if you're going to change, it would have to be after the season, and if you do that, you're looking at a completely new defensive staff. So for people to call for Gus Bradley to be fired right now, it doesn't make any sense. Sure, you can call for him to be fired after the season all you want. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, just by the way, so just keep that in mind. But he's not going to be fired right now. And it doesn't make sense to fire Gus Bradley right now. At this point, you got to live with what he's doing. You got to just hope that he is calling the right plays to put the players in position to succeed. And then you hope that the players are actually going out there and executing the way they're supposed to on the defense.
Yeah, and look, the defense is reactionary. right? Like defense is usually dictated upon what the offense is doing. So when we talk about Shane Steichen being a chameleon, right? It's difficult to find a defensive coordinator that's just like, you know what, let's tailor this game plan to the offense. Okay, it's a little bit different in that regard. And then you have to also factor in that, like you mentioned with Ron Miles, well, he's training those defensive backs in Gus Bradley's scheme. Okay, he's training them how to manage their zones, how to manage their coverage. So all of this, from the defensive backs coach to the linebackers coach to the assistant linebackers coach to Charlie Partridge, all the way down to Gus Bradley, where he's over the top of this whole defensive look. It's all over his scheme. They're all operating within his scheme, and to just extract that, you're pulling all of the training your assistants have also done. It's just way different. You can't just do that. So I think if you see a change, it's at the end of the season. I will say, though, if the Colts can somehow start tackling, that will help Gus Bradley's scheme, because, again, his scheme is predicated on keeping things for short gains in front of you and making the tackles. So, again, I know this sounds hilarious to say and kind of weird, but I fully expect Indianapolis to focus on tackling. You cannot have missed tackles against better teams, which, by the way, even though this is an easy stretch, most of these teams are better than New England.
And so the Colts are 6-7 right now. They head into their bye week. They a very much needed bye week, Drake. The last bye week that you can have in the NFL. The Colts need to rest, recharge, get their minds right, because they've got a really big game in 2 weeks against the Denver Broncos. That, again, if the Colts lose that, then their playoff hopes are pretty much dashed. If they win that game, then boy, things are going to get interesting. But Drake, as we sit right now, Colts 6-7 after that win against the New England Patriots. Are you encouraged about the Colts for the rest of the way, or are you discouraged about the Colts and their chances the rest of the way?
I think that you saw what can happen when they have a really rough performance offensively, when they don't hold on to the ball long. They still went out there and they scrounged out a win. I'm encouraged, man. I'm encouraged by Anthony Richardson. I'm encouraged by the offensive line. I'm encouraged by some of the coaching staff, Jonathan Taylor. I'm discouraged by A.D. Mitchell. I'm discouraged by Kylan Granson. You know, you got to go out there and you got to make the plays. But I'm also discouraged by the defense. And kind of like we were talking about how the offense needed a bounce-back performance against the Patriots. Well, guess what? When the defense plays Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, everyone's going to be looking at them like, you guys better have a bounce-back performance. I don't care if you're on the road again.
Yeah, I think you can be encouraged with the offense, especially,
Sure.
Anthony Richardson and his growth. You're seeing that the Colts offensive line looked much better. Jonathan Taylor was able to get going. Hopefully Josh Downs is back against the Broncos. Michael Pittman certainly could use this bye week as well to continue to get healthy. But I'm very encouraged about where this offense is, mainly because of Anthony Richardson and what he's been able to do. But I'd be lying if I said I was encouraged about the defense, because it looks like they've regressed again, and they look like how they did earlier in the season. And no matter how good Anthony Richardson goes out there and plays, you can't just have one side of the football playing well if you want to make the playoffs. At this point, with the hole that the Colts have dug themselves into, both sides of the ball have to be playing at a high level. And honestly, I mean, I'm not sure if the Colts defense is going to be able to do that. And you can't say that, well, the Colts have an easy schedule remaining, so they're going to get back on track. The Colts had an easy game on Sunday against a really bad offense in the New England Patriots and allowed them to get over 400 yards. So I'm encouraged by the offense, not very encouraged by the defense. And hopefully this bye week comes in handy for them and they're able to get back on track, because they're going to need to be playing their best down the stretch. Drake, let's wrap up here with the Colts injury report and then our Colts player of the game. Obviously, we talked about it. Josh Downs, with that shoulder injury, missed the game against the New England Patriots, and Shane Steichen was not going to commit to him being back for the Denver Broncos. That would be a huge guy that is out against the Broncos, and arguably the most important game of the Colts season. So you really hope that Josh Downs can heal up within these next 2 weeks and be out there when the Colts take the field again in week 15.
Absolutely crucial. Josh Downs opens up the rest of the offense. I think you saw just what the offense misses without Josh Downs against the Patriots.
Exactly. Tanner Bortolini missed the game with a concussion. You're expecting him back after a couple of weeks to be ready to go in week 15. Braden Smith also missed the game with a personal matter. No details on that personal matter. Shane Steichen, I don't think, has either been asked about that personal matter either, nor would he probably disclose that. So, but obviously it was big enough that Braden Smith had to miss the game. Hopefully he is back and in his normal right tackle spot when the Colts come back from the bye. Ashton Doolin with that ankle injury missed the game. But some good news on the offensive line, actually, Drake, where Ryan Kelly looks like he will be designated to return when the Colts come back from their bye. Shane Steichen said that there's a good chance he does return against the Denver Broncos. So you're hoping that Kelly can heal up and then he starts playing like he did last season as opposed to this season, because admittedly it hasn't been a very good year for Ryan Kelly.
It's great to have a captain back, and I think if Kelly can return after this bye week, it'll give him an opportunity to maybe have a nice little upswing to finish the contract season.
Exactly. All right, Drake, we're to our final segment, the feel-good segment of our Monday episodes, the Colts player of the game. Let's look at the chat before we dive in here. Paul Wilson, AR5 has to be player of the game unless you go O-line. Hustleman Jones, AR is overwhelmingly the player of the game by a football field between him and anyone else. Semper Colts fan, AR carried us to the win. AR5 is saying AR and JT for player of the game. But Drake, let's hear it. Who is your Colts player of the game?
I'm going to give it to three guys. I like to go outside of the box. I'm going to give it to Danny Pinter. I'm going to give it to Mark Lewinsky, and I'm going to give it to Matt Gonsalves. Those guys secured that right side of the line from the center on after shuffling them up like that. Not the most confidence going into that game, but those guys proved me wrong, and they played out, man.
There you go. I'm not gonna argue with that. Sean Contright says Jonathan Taylor, NFL nerd, AR for sure. Stats Matt says player of the game, AR to carry the last drive. But Drake, yeah, I'm going with Anthony Richardson. Gotta go with Anthony Richardson. Again, stats aren't pretty. 12 of 24, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 2 interceptions. Also added 48 yards on the ground with 1 touchdown and 1 2-point conversion. But without Anthony Richardson, the Colts don't win this game. Anthony Richardson was fantastic on that final drive. Was it perfect the whole game? Absolutely not. But you are seeing the growth that you want to see to give you hope this kid can be the franchise quarterback. And like you mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, Drake, you haven't felt this way since Andrew Luck, that a quarterback can carry a team to a victory. I think not only Colts fans are starting to see it, well, the ones that are actually watching the games and not just watching the box score, but you can tell in that locker room as well, this Colts team feels like when you put the ball in Five's hands, he's going to will you to a victory. And that's exactly what he did against the New England Patriots on Sunday. So that's our show for today, everyone. Really appreciate you all joining us on Victory Monday to talk about this Colts win over the Patriots, the first win for the Colts in New England since 2006. I was in sixth grade at the time. So guys, I'm 30. I'm balding. I'm an old man at this point. So it's been a long time since the Colts won in Foxborough. But hey, shout out to Truitt and Paul Wilson for our super chats. Shout out to Stats Matt for the incredible stats once again, and everyone else that joined us this evening. Please be sure to follow us on all of our socials. They're in the description. I said them at the beginning of the episode. Make sure you check those out, as well as subscribe and hit that bell for the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake has a lot of articles out there on horseshoehuddle.com, Indianapolis Colts on SI, whatever you want to call us these days. It all gets you to the same place. Drake, tell us what the people need to go check out.
So, yeah, I did a prediction on Anthony Richardson's stat line against the Patriots. Go laugh at my passing prediction, but go marvel in how close I was to his rushing stats. And then, of course, I had my risers and fallers from the victory over the Patriots. So please go check those out.
Awesome. Definitely give those a read. Hustleman Jones is great show, fellas. Go Colts. Shoot, I'm 34 and I'm not even balding. Well, brother,
I'm 34.
You see why I've got the chrome dome going in most of these episodes, unless I'm wearing a hat. So yeah, you can see I've been balding for quite some time. But for myself, I haven't been able to get my post game article out yet. I apologize, guys. Was dealing with a sick 6-month-old. He's having a really rough time time. So been on daddy duty for the past couple of games or days. But tomorrow morning should be out on horseshoehuddle.com. We're going to go play by play with Anthony Richardson, doing a little bit different angle for this post-game piece. Anthony Richardson talked through that final drive after the game, and I thought it was really interesting what he had to say. So we're going to go through the final drive again, and who doesn't want to go through that final drive with Anthony Richardson? Hear what he had to say about each one of those plays or each one of those series throughout the final drive. That's going to be out on horseshoehuddle.com tomorrow morning. And then later this week, we need to hear, I mentioned it, that this Colts locker really believes in Anthony Richardson and that he can take them places, take them to victories. You're going to hear from all the teammates that talked about that this week. Going to put all those comments together to show you what this locker room is really feeling behind Anthony Richardson. That'll come out this week as well. But make sure you check us out as well as everything else on horseshoehuddle.com throughout the entire bye week. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And guys, like I said, we're taking a mini bye ourselves. We will not have a show on Thursday night, but we'll be back next Monday to talk about all the happenings from week 14 in the NFL and get you all set and get the clear playoff picture for you for the Colts as they head into the stretch run. So everyone enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next Monday to talk some more Colts football with all of you, talk some Colts playoff football with all of you, get you all set for the final 4 games of the NFL season. We'll be seeing you then.